The surprising or not so surprising news about the resignation of the Egyptian cabinet and its head Hazem al-Bablawi on Monday has prompted various reactions in the media. Today we'll talk to journalist, academic and MENA expert David Waring about his piece in The Guardian. Waring's comment piece in The Guardian discusses the surprise resignation of Hazem al-Bablawi and the cabinet in Egypt. Following the ousting of the elected Muslim Brotherhood and Mohamed Morsi and the instatement of the new cabinet in 2013, Waring writes that their preference has always been to reside in the background, protecting their significant political and economic privileges, while civilians assume the duties of day-to-day governance. Waring adds there has been much speculation that the dissolution of the cabinet was a formality designed to free the real head of government, al-Sisi, from his responsibilities as defence minister, thus clearing a constitutional barrier to his widely predicted presidential bid. Waring adds so draconian are the over-tightening restrictions on political dissent in Egypt that it seems unlikely he would feel the need to exit the defence ministry under cover of a general cabinet resignation. Furthermore, reports in the Egyptian media that the cabinet did not in fact resign but was summarily sacked by the president hint at another explanation. Waring writes that the state of the economy has been ignored. In recent months, the economy has been plagued by fuel shortages, routine power cuts and, most recently, a vast wave of strikes as tens of thousands of workers protest the government's failure to fully implement a minimum wage. He adds that a constant theme has been the economy's chronic failure to deliver the basics of life to the population: decent wages, secure jobs and the necessities of life at affordable prices. He concludes the neoliberal medicine of balancing the books by cutting subsidies, largely those upon which the population relies, while opening up the country to foreign investment, appears superficial and entirely unpromising. Today we're joined by the author of The Guardian article, David Waring. Thank you for joining us, David.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
My first question, the speculation that this could be a formality to allow Sisi to take the presidency has been disproved most recently. What do you think could be the real motive behind this move?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That was a conclusion that people drew initially. Today we find that Sisi is back in his post as defence minister, so obviously that wasn't the real reason. I mean, there were some reports in Egyptian media over the last couple of days that actually the government didn't resign so much as was sacked by the president. Apparently, Bablawi only found out on Sunday that he and his entire cabinet were to resign on the Monday. I mean, what seems like here is that the civilian government has been told to take the fall, essentially, for Sisi. I mean, Sisi's planning his presidency bids. That's something that everyone expects. He's started to sort of campaign unofficially. His visit to Moscow and his endorsement by Putin, I guess, was part of that. And I guess what he doesn't want, just as he's about to announce his candidacy, is to be associated with the problems that Egypt is currently undergoing economically. I mean, the latest manifestation of Egypt's deep-seated economic problems. And a good way to disassociate himself from that sort of thing is for the cabinet to take the fall, for the cabinet to resign and take responsibility for that. That keeps him separate from this sort of thing. I mean, generally, the Egyptian military has tried to take a kind of hands-off approach. It wants to protect its privileges, it wants to protect its economic privileges, its economic empire, and it wants civilians to do the day-to-day running of the country. So you can think of the civilian government as a kind of shield, as a kind of human shield for the generals, and I think it's kind of played that role here in this instance.
When you talk about the civilian government, do you mean the cabinet that's just been fired? Is that who you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah, and the civilian administrators that were appointed after Morsi was ejected last summer.
And you think the military is going to just simply install a new cabinet?
Yeah, I mean, that's been announced. I mean, yesterday afternoon it was announced that the new Prime Minister would be coming in. He was the Housing.
My second question, what role do you think the Brotherhood is now going to play in the unfolding events?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What role do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood is going to play in these unfolding events?
Sorry, you keep cutting out.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
I asked, what role do you think the Muslim Brotherhood will play in the unfolding events?
Well, very little at the moment. There's not a lot they can do politically other than demonstrate against what happened last summer when they were thrown out of government, and even that seems to be a pretty bad move. They're not gaining any sympathy amongst the population. There's not a great deal they can do. They can try to put forward a different stance and say that actually they're prepared to work with the new status quo, but the way they've been treated by government, the way they're viewed by a large section of the population, is essentially as a kind of enemy within, and the approach seems to be basically throughout by murdering their activists on the streets in their hundreds, which happened last year, or by locking them up in their thousands. So they've not got much of a role at the moment, and that's going to be the case going forward, which is dangerous in a way, because although they're unpopular amongst large sections of the population, they're a part of the body politic, and you can't just wish them away.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned economic issues that are being ignored currently. We've seen several strikes and protests in Cairo demanding the minimum wage.
Yeah.
What promises have been made in this regard, and what prospect is there for things like the minimum wage to be put in place?
I mean, as I understand it, this is very much observing from the outside. As I understand it, the minimum wage was announced earlier this year, and it hasn't been yet. And also, a lot of key public sector workers have been excluded from it. And in any case, the rise doesn't really meet the needs of the people. It's not enough for people to live on decently. I mean, Egypt's economic problems are, as I argued in the article, they're really deep-seated. Whenever you read an article in the Western press about the problems in Egypt's economy, which is very rare because all the focus is on politics and human rights. I mean, rightly, but the economy is important too.
Yeah.
You hear about it a lot less, and when you do hear about it, you always get some kind of consultant, some economic consultant. Yeah. It's quoted in the article, and they say, well, they must cut the economic subsidies and all the rest of it. This is pretty superficial, I mean, it's not just a question of balancing the books and attracting business in Egypt. I mean, Egypt needs, it needs a decades-long led investment, to develop the economy, to build out something that, that produces high-value products that can help Egypt to earn its keep in the long term, and to good jobs, secure jobs that match kind of this youth bulge in the population now, like a huge proportion of the population.
We've experienced a technical difficulty there with the phone line, so we'll end there. Thank you to David Waring, journalist and analyst, for joining us. For more updates, please visit levant.tv. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.